In this clip, we're going to take a look at zones of control and infiltration fire, two concepts that are inextricably linked in the Air and Armor game system. We begin with the basic concept of a zone of control, which almost all of you are perfectly aware of, and that is that every ground unit in Air and Armor, with two notable exceptions, has a zone of control in the 6 adjacent hexes. However, in this game, zones of control do not inhibit movement, as is standard in most war games. Rather, they are fields of fire. Enemy movement into and through ZOCs can trigger that fire, which is termed infiltration fire. However, an enemy unit pays absolutely no additional movement cost to enter or leave a friendly ZOC. Because this is a field of fire, units that don't have the ability to fire into an adjacent hex do not have a zone of control. So, for example, headquarters units that have no attack strength do not have a zone of control. Rocket artillery units, which do have an attack strength, but are barred from attacking adjacent hexes because the warheads on their rockets don't arm quickly enough, also don't have a zone of control. The other feature about zones of control is that because they are fields of fire, they are blocked by close terrain. Close terrain is defined in this game as heavy woods, rough, town, and city hexes. So this West German M48 unit has a zone of control into the 2 clear and 1 adjacent light wood hexes, but does not have a zone of control into the city and 2 heavy woods hexes that it is also next to, because it doesn't have a field of fire into those hexes. It can shoot up the front row of trees or the front row of buildings, but an enemy unit that is infiltrating through that terrain is protected by the cover that those hexes represent. Now, there is one other unit that has a different kind of zone of control, and that is an attack helicopter unit. Because attack helicopter units can zip around very quickly, and because they are above the terrain, they always have a zone of control in all 6 adjacent hexes, and also in their own hex, because it is possible for an enemy unit to pass underneath them. So an attack helicopter zone of control is never blocked. So let's go take a look at how this works out in the game. So in this example, we're looking at the 170th Guards Motor Rifle Regiment, which starts its operation with a grand and glorious 9 steps, and it has been assigned a hasty attack operation. So let's assume, for the sake of argument, that the Soviet player would like to get to this hex here. It is not possible for him to get there any other way than to move as follows. That's 1 movement point, that's a half a movement point, so effectively 1.5 movement points. It now cannot use at road movement because it's about to enter a hex adjacent to an enemy unit, so that 1.5 movement points becomes 2.5 movement points. No more road movement possible, but with 2.5 movement points expended, it still has 3.5 movement points, and therefore it can enter this heavy woods hex. However, it has entered this American unit's ZOC, and at the moment of contact, the American unit reveals that he's got 2 steps there. He is now capable of exercising infiltration fire because this enemy unit has both entered and exited the same ZOC in the same turn. So in this particular case, this American Bradley unit would get to fire. And when infiltration fire is executed in a clear terrain hex, it's doubled. So this unit would normally fire with a basic attack strength of 8. It will now fire with a modified fire strength of 16. Standard division by 2 puts that back to 8, but it's essentially shooting with 8 hints in here. We roll the die. The result is a 4, so that 8 becomes a 7, and this unit's defense strength, which is 4, means that it must absorb 1 step from that infiltration fire. And so it's made it to the safety of these woods, but it lost a company moving through the Bradley's field of fire. All right, let's look at another situation. Let's presume that the Soviet player decides that what he really wants to do is he wants to attack this unit here. So in this case, he makes this his objective, and then he goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Now in this case, he triggers infiltration fire because he has both entered and exited this ZOC, but the other thing that triggers infiltration fire is when a unit moves directly from one ZOC to another. When that occurs, any unit that's got a ZOC into both hexes gets a shot. So the infiltration fire is always executed in the ZOC hex that a unit is leaving. So this Bradley unit here is going to get a shot at this unit in this hex as it passes by. So again, that's a clear terrain hex, which means this infiltration fire is doubled. So this would normally be 2 times 4 for 8 basic strength, but it is now doubled to 16, standard division by 2 back to 8. We roll the die. The result is a 7. That means that we have inflicted a total of 9 hits. This unit's defense strength in this hex is only 4. 9 hits requires this unit to lose. It was originally a 9, so we're down to a 7. So it's taken 2 hits, and now it attempts to move from here to here. And when it does, it has both entered and exited a ZOC hex, and the ZOC hex in this case is now being exerted by both this unit and this unit. So both of them are going to get to shoot when the BMP regiment exits that hex. So this is revealed to be a one-step unit. So we've got this unit, which has a basic fire strength of 8, and it is not doubled because this is not clear terrain. So we've got 8 here, we've got 9 here, so that's 17, standard division by 2, we're back to 8, we shoot. This time we get a 5, so we have inflicted 8 points of damage. Defense strength of the Soviet unit in this hex is +1, and so it's a 5, which means that it has to lose 1 more step. So this Soviet unit has successfully blown through U.S. lines, but it lost a battalion out of the regiment in doing so. And that's how ZOCs and infiltration work. Now, let's look at a different case. Let's just presume, for the sake of argument, that this unit started here. And let's presume that starting here, it still wants to take out this artillery unit as its objective. So in this case, the unit's first move is to here. Now what's important about this is that it is moved directly from one ZOC to another. However, no unit exerts a ZOC into both of these hexes. So this move did not trigger fire. And in fact, whenever a unit exits a ZOC that it started in, it never triggers fire by virtue of exiting that hex. However, if this unit that was here chose to move directly here, it's not exiting a ZOC, it's moving directly from one ZOC to another, so it would trigger fire there. The Soviet player not wanting to trigger fire from this very strong American unit, however, decides that he's going to bypass it, so he makes the choice to make this same move. So down here, he's okay. When he moves here, we're going to get a shot at him in that hex. When he moves here, both of these units exert a ZOC into that hex, so a second shot would occur, and likely we would see the same result that we saw before, which is that this unit would probably lose another 3 steps moving through these 2 ZOC hexes. So that's how infiltration fire works. There are a couple of subtleties that are probably worth adding. So let's just presume that this unit goes back here, and that there was another unit of the regiment, and so this was the setup at the start of the operation. So again, this Soviet player wants to attack the U.S. artillery unit, But in this case, the first unit that he moves is this unit here, and then he will take infiltration fire here, and then when he moves again, he's going to take infiltration fire in this hex. However, this unit here that started in the hex is not moving. So when the second infiltration fire occurs in this hex, only this unit is affected. This one isn't. So the unit that moved is going to take fire here and here. And then whatever survivors get there, they're done. They will be subject to defensive fire from this unit here, but they're subject to no more infiltration fire. When this unit then moves to join, it's moving from here to here, and again it's moving from one ZOC to another, but there is no unit that exerts a ZOC into both hexes. Therefore, the second unit's move does not trigger infiltration fire. So the second unit never got shot at by infiltration fire. Another subtlety is that because infiltration fire is occurring as enemy units are attempting to maneuver by you as fast as possible, it is not possible to call in fire support. So you can't make a fire call for artillery or attack helicopters for infiltration fire. The only fire that's possible is coming from units that are actually exerting a ZOC into the hex that is being moved through. There is one special case we should mention in closing. If a player has placed a reinforcing unit along the map edge at the start of the game turn, and the opposing player moves a unit so as to block its entry, and when that unit actually activates, the owning player chooses to move it onto the map into the ZOC of the blocking unit, that unit is not subject to infiltration fire in this notional off-map hex. It is, however, subject to infiltration fire if it both enters and exits a ZOC hex on the map. So if it were to continue to move here, then the NATO player would get an infiltration fire shot at it in that hex.